Members, this is the Honourable Member's inaugural address, and the usual courtesies and conventions of the House apply. The Honourable Julie Freeman.
Thank you, President. May I congratulate you on your re-election and thank you for the warm welcome to the newcomers of the 42nd Parliament. I am pleased to now deliver my inaugural speech. The places we live matter. They shape who we are in a fundamental way. Whether you live in Coolgardie, Cottesloe or Carnamah will have a direct impact on your likelihood of finishing school, your employment opportunities, your worldview and your life expectancy. Your postcode matters to your health, your wealth and your happiness. That's why people like to ask each other not only what do you do, but also where do you come from? The places we live become part of our identity, how we see ourselves and how others see us. We want to stay or we want to leave. We are a local or a blow-in. We belong or we don't belong. The places we live matter, and the place I live is regional Western Australia. I have thoroughly enjoyed the process of listening to the inaugural addresses, not just by the new members of the Legislative Council, but also the recordings of the incumbent members. I am struck by how many of you have strong links to regional Western Australia and the breadth of personal experience you bring to this place. But I fear for the day that Labor's deliberate removal of regional representation in this chamber will result in 37 metropolitan-based MLCs, and who will be left to stand up for us then? Watching your addresses has helped me to get to know each of you, where you came from, what you have experienced, how that has shaped the decisions you have already made, and how it will impact on the ones you will be making in the next 4 years. I take this moment to help you to understand me as well. Let me begin by what I hope to achieve in this place. It's very simple. It's to be a strong advocate for that which matters most to me, regional Western Australia and the people that call her home. When I became President of the Nationals WA, I took the time to set a personal vision, to be clear about what I was working towards, and that is that regional WA is a place where people can live and work from the cradle to the grave in cities and towns that are thriving and sustainable, economically, socially and environmentally. That's what my decisions will be guided by. I have seen the neglect of the regional parts of the state, which are out of sight and out of mind, and I am concerned about the issues which have spread statewide. Continual population decline in all but the major regional centres and a few lucky tourist towns. A reduction in safety and a frightening rise in antisocial behaviour. A lack of acceptable and affordable housing, worn out and dilapidated infrastructure in our hospitals, schools and police stations. A desperate shortage of skilled workers and professionals putting the handbrake on regional economies. The heartbreaking downward spiral for too many Aboriginal people trapped in poverty and hopelessness without access to the services which would actually help to close the gap. Transportation networks buckling under the pressure of increased heavy haulage, unreliable power supplies and unreliable communications, and the promise of new mining and energy production projects which might bring prosperity to the state but give no guarantee of improving the communities who will live beside this development. To build a balanced and more sustainable state, every place must have the opportunity to flourish with a fair share of the state's wealth. We must temper the trend towards urbanisation with a concerted effort to reinvigorate our rural and remote towns, as well as our large regional centres. The potential for growth is already there, but to achieve that growth, we must turn the far reaches of our state into places where the people want to go and want to put down roots. People move to the regions for the natural environment, the beach, the bush, the sky. They come for a good job and they stay if there's career progression. They stay when there is a strong sense of community. They stay when they can access reliable healthcare, good education, quality childcare, comfortable and affordable housing and safe and efficient transport networks. They stay when the internet and phone networks allow them to stay connected with friends and family, to run a business or work remotely from the place they want to call home. And they stay when they feel safe. None of this is any different to what people in metropolitan Perth are looking for from government. Place is important no matter where you live. But in the regions of Western Australia, especially in the towns that are to the north and to the east, and the further away you get from the capital, these things are transformative. So how did place come to be the thing that drove me to this day? I was born in Scotland and came to Australia as an 8-year-old when my parents, John and Helen Robson, decided to seek new opportunities. John was the eldest of 3 boys born into a farming family in Lancashire, England, just before World War II. While pregnant with my dad, my grandmother contracted tuberculosis, and the medications she needed to keep her alive damaged Dad's kidneys and impacted his health for the rest of his life. His health kept him from being a farmer like his father and brothers, but Dad showed academic promise, so he had other opportunities. Through a scholarship and deciding to devote himself to his studies, he went on to graduate top of his medical school at St Andrews University, rising to be the youngest head of a department at Glasgow Royal Infirmary before accepting the position of head of biochemistry at the Institute of Medical and Veterinary Science in Adelaide. We then came to Perth, where he settled into a long career at Fremantle Hospital as head of biochemistry. After managing with 1 kidney for most of his life, thanks to those medications in the 1930s, Dad's retirement was marked by renal dialysis 3 times a week. The doctor became a patient. He passed away in 2006, but thankfully he got to know his granddaughters first. My mum, Helen, who is here today, is the daughter of a Scottish coal miner. One of 3 children, she understood from an early age the importance and dignity of hard work and self-discipline. Where Dad's story is one of opportunity and choices in spite of his challenges, Mum's story is one of not accepting the limitations of your circumstances. She is curious, intelligent and determined. To this day, she has a deep love of literature, music and theatre. Mum should have gone to university to put that intellect to work, but in working class Scotland in the 1960s, that wasn't an option. Like everyone else of her age, she went into the workforce to support the family. Mum is my inspiration to never take the opportunities I have for granted, and she is part of the reason I say yes to challenges and hard work, because thanks to my parents' example and the good education they provided me, it is my privilege to be able to. The decision my parents made to come to Australia was life-changing. I am so grateful they were courageous enough to leave the security of family and friends in search of a bright new future on the other side of the world. In 1978, after our belongings were packed to go by sea, we took a grand tour of the UK to say goodbye to family and friends in Scotland and England, and 5 of us, Dad, Mum, my gran, my sister and I, boarded a plane for Australia. We spent 3 years in Adelaide before coming to Perth. I didn't appreciate at the time the dislocation which comes with migration. I know my mum and my gran both felt the separation deeply, and I remember my younger sister, Helen, being homesick. Moving large distances and starting again twice in 3 years set me adrift with nothing to anchor me to any particular place. That being said, I loved the city life in Perth in my teens and early 20s, and I would like to acknowledge my 2 dear friends, Bridie Pastel and Jodie Harley, who are here today, and played a big part in those formative years. Together we journeyed from adolescence to adulthood, testing limits and exploring possibilities. Perth was fun in the 1980s and 1990s. The fashion, the transformation of Fremantle with the America's Cup, the live music scene, new cafes and restaurants. It was frankly very hard to concentrate on school and then university with so many distractions. But I knew when I graduated as an early childhood teacher at the end of 1992 that it was time to get serious. Interest rates were through the roof at 17%. Unemployment was at 11%, and we were still in the recession we had to have. Teaching jobs were hard to get, and if you wanted permanency with the Education Department, you had to go to the country for 2 years. I clung to the hope that I would be the lucky one to get a job in Mandurah to fulfil my country obligation, but I needed to get my career started. I decided I would be happy to take a job anywhere in the state. The Education Department offered me Mullawa District High School. I'd never heard of it, I had no idea where it was, but I said yes. Some decisions you get right. My experience as an early childhood teacher solidified my belief, one which is now backed up by the science, that the first 1,000 days from conception are the most important in every human being's life. If we can get our babies and children off to a great start, they will have longer, healthier, more productive and more fulfilling lives. They will cost the taxpayer less, they will contribute to society more, and when the inevitable crises of life hit, they will be more resilient. Too often, society waits until the horse has bolted and governments find themselves scrambling to manage juvenile justice, adolescent mental health, and a raft of costly health, social and economic problems in our adult population. Investing in our parents, babies and children is not just the hallmark of a strong and ethical society, it is also smart economics. A graduate school teacher arriving in a rural town. Well, you can guess the rest of the story. The teacher met a farmer and they lived happily ever after. I am an example of why many people move to the regions. State government jobs make up a significant portion of the jobs in rural and remote towns, whether that's educators, health workers, police or utilities. I was one of the people who moved to the country for a good job because I knew that country service was part of what I needed to do to progress. Although I have to be honest, I did not expect that I'd be staying. I stayed because this is where my husband Paul was, and his vocation, agriculture, is bound to a particular place. Paul is the third generation of his family to farm in Mullawa. Apart from his secondary education, it's the only place he has ever lived. He has a deep sense of belonging to the land and to the community. First through Paul, and then through our daughters Holly and Zoe, I found a place that I could belong as well. We should be proud of our broadacre cropping farmers. They can turn out crops of up to 19.5 million tonnes of grain, exporting to 30 countries and generating billions of dollars for the state economy each year. In Western Australia, they achieve this without irrigation, using precision techniques to squeeze the maximum productivity out of every millimetre of rain. After all this time in a farming community, I continue to be astounded by how quickly our farmers can adapt to the variability of the season, how quickly they embrace new technology, and how resilient they are in the face of endless climate, market, and policy changes. As soon as I started courting my farmer, the clubs and organisations started circling the new girl. And in my second year in town, I was Mullawa's Miss Football, a glamorous title for a fundraiser, learning how to organise events and coordinate the kiosk. In my third year in town, I was Treasurer of the Agricultural Society, and I was appointed the key teacher at my district high school, responsible for inducting new staff despite only being there 5 minutes myself. Small towns and small schools are like that. Lots of opportunities and lots of supportive people encouraging you to jump in and have a go because they need you to jump in and have a go. In my city life, I had never volunteered before. I didn't need to. Whatever I had needed or wanted had been available to me. I was able to be a recipient and a consumer. Now I discovered a place where some of the things I needed and wanted were not commercially viable, were not provided by local or state government, and when they were provided by volunteers, it seemed to be the same people showing up to every committee meeting and busy bee. If I was going to make my life in Mullawa and have the things I needed and wanted, I could no longer be a recipient and a consumer. I was going to be required to be a contributor and a giver. When my children came along, I took over running playgroup, established a one-day-a-week occasional childcare service and joined the Mullawa Health Service Board. Each small step led to the next and built new skills. And the more skills you build, the more you can do for your community and the more they look to you for help. For over 30 years, I've had at least one and often up to 6 volunteer roles in my community at any given time. I have been a Mullawa Shire councillor, secretary of the PNF, Secretary of the Mullawa Community Resource Centre, Deputy President of the Parish Council and Secretary of the Mullawa Agricultural Show, to name some of the organisations. Choosing to educate my children regionally, when they went to secondary school, I also sat on the board of Geraldton Residential College and then the board of Geraldton Grammar School. I have worked with others to start things where we saw a gap and consolidate or grow things that already existed. The question is always, how can I help? I want to celebrate the hundreds of incredible volunteers I have worked with in dozens of not-for-profit groups, to the visionaries who came up with the idea of a community farm for Mullawa, returning profits directly to our district for the last 10 years, to the dedicated protectors of our heritage whose endless grant applications and tireless work has protected the magnificent Church of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, built by the renowned priest and architect Monsignor John Hawes. To the ever-reliable stalwarts who are the linchpin of the Mullawa Wildflower Show and Visitor Centre, sharing our unique biodiversity with visitors every spring, including the irreplaceable wreath flower, rare delicate orchids and breathtaking carpets of everlastings. To the heroes who step up when crisis hits to put out the bushfires and crew the ambulance, putting their own livelihoods aside to come to our rescue in times of need. To the jugglers who manage to keep on top of huge community events like the Mullawa Muster and Rodeo and the Mullawa Agricultural Show, while serving on the committees of the Sports Club, the Football Club, Community Resource Centre or School Board all at the same time. And to the hordes of workers who never step into the limelight but can always be found at every event or busy bee, rolling up their sleeves and getting things done. These are the people doing whatever they can to create better places to live. They don't just exist in Mullawa, they can be found right across our great state. And every community in regional WA could not function without them, as we pick up the slack and fill the gaps to make our towns places where people want to stay. Through volunteering, I learned the satisfaction of coming together with like-minded people to make our place a better place. But I have also experienced the helplessness and frustration of both state and local government decisions relentlessly eroding what we have created and putting barriers in the way of us doing more for ourselves. Belonging to a community and a place changes how you interact with it. You become very defensive of it and you find yourself fighting to protect it. People who are connected to the place where they live do what they can within the skills and resources they have. But inevitably there is a limit to what communities can do for themselves, and that's where government has a duty to step in. There is a reasonable expectation that the whole purpose of government is to do the things that are important for the people which we cannot do for ourselves. To the big things like building and managing roads and schools and hospitals and the delivery of services. It is also a reasonable expectation that governments provide support by making it easier, not harder, to run our businesses, run our organisations, take care of ourselves and take care of our own communities. It's exhausting being the perennial squeaky wheel, fighting for local decision-making, advocating for better service delivery, highlighting the impact of red tape and other obstacles to getting things done. No one wants to be that person, but it's impossible to stand by and do nothing when you can see the harm that's being caused and you feel like no one is listening. When mobile phone reception and internet connectivity is so patchy, it prevents regional people from participating in business, remote work, education and contemporary culture. When my friends and neighbours are 4 times more likely to die on the roads because we live in regional WA. When there is no dedicated rescue helicopter in the Midwest and Goldfields, so the critical golden hour after a serious accident, the difference between life and death will be wasted waiting. When regional children continue to have poorer educational outcomes because they have additional barriers to cope with, like the distance of travel to school, boarding away from home, constant turnover of teachers, unreliable internet, and an over-reliance on the school of isolated and distance education to offer basic curriculum choices which are taken for granted in cities. When regional people have poorer health outcomes with lower survival rates of cancer and other illnesses and greater impact on families, not only do they cope with the emotional turmoil of extended periods of time away from home and support networks, and the gruelling torture of travelling long distances when physically vulnerable to receive the treatment they need, but also the added financial impact of being away from businesses and employment, coupled with the additional cost of travel and accommodation, which inevitably leads to compromises and tough decisions being made. When childcare is virtually non-existent in many towns, increasing the difficulty in recruiting skilled workers and denying women in particular the opportunity to participate fully in the community and the economy. When housing is in limited supply and what is available is ageing and overpriced, it is impossible to find construction workers to build new stock, and even if you could, you'd better be able to pay cash because it's impossible to get finance for new projects in small inland towns where the value of the finished project is less than the cost of building it. And when ensuring your most precious assets, your home or your business, is so expensive it's no longer viable and you're forced to rely on hope as your only protection. All of these challenges need intervention by government. Any one of them is enough to cause people who have moved to the regions to decide to leave. All of them together have caused the imbalance we are currently experiencing, where over 2/3 of Western Australians are packed into the 6,000 square kilometre Perth and Peel regions, leaving almost 2.5 million square kilometres underpopulated and overlooked. And there's another challenge in regional Western Australia that I am compelled to speak about because I have lived alongside it. In the 30 years I have lived in the Midwest, I have met many wonderful Aboriginal people taking leadership roles and working to make a better life for themselves, their family and their community. Health workers, artists, educators, police officers, social workers, shire workers and writers. But I have also seen too many people sliding further into poverty and hopelessness. In the faraway places, family violence, gambling, substance abuse, hunger, chronic health conditions, homelessness and illiteracy are hidden out of sight. I feel privileged to participate in an articulate and genuine welcome to country, and on National Sorry Day I feel emotional and indeed very sorry about the consequences of colonisation for Aboriginal people. But I also feel conflicted because in my heart I know these words and feelings, as important as they are, won't change the lives of the little girls I once taught, who would come to kindergarten and sleep all morning because their house was overcrowded and there was no quiet space for them, whose noses and eyes were always running because the house had no heating and they didn't get good nutrition to make them resilient and strong, and who fell further and further behind their peers so early in their schooling because their attendance was irregular and infrequent. I know these observances won't give practical and immediate help to the 9-year-old girl I once taught, who bounced between foster homes because both parents had been in and out of prison since she was a baby and nobody seemed to be able to cope with her behaviour. And I know the slow pathway to reconciliation didn't happen fast enough to help the 12-year-old struggling to learn to read, who had barely attended school in the 8 years since he started and who became a menace in town with break-ins, vandalism and fighting. As an adult, he went on to murder 2 Perth women in their own home during a drug-fuelled home invasion. These are children who went to school with my own daughters in our small rural school, my very privileged and safe daughters, and it broke my heart every day that no matter how much effort I put in as a teacher, it would never be enough to make up the difference. Too many in the Aboriginal community I see are struggling for hope and opportunity, and too many are going to funerals for young people who should not be dead, instead of going to graduations, weddings and birthdays. To my mind, poverty, addiction, unemployment, homelessness, high rates of incarceration, lack of education and poor health are the presenting problems that should be our primary focus. Until there has been progress on the statistics for Aboriginal children are comparable to non-Aboriginal children, until there is actually movement on closing the gap, everything else just feels like window dressing. The further families are from the services they need, the harder it is to make changes. If, as a society, we are serious about equality and social justice and giving help and opportunities to people who are ready for change, we must invest in putting the services back into the regions. In stepping up to support our regions, governments of every level must remember that place is important. So listen to the people who live there. My time as a councillor on Mullawa Shire Council and advocating for my community through the Community Resource Centre, as well as the time I have spent with organisations such as Community Builders, the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation and Leadership WA, has crystallised the importance of local decision-making and the consequences of decisions being made with a one-size-fits-all approach by policymakers far away from our reality. Which brings me to the Nationals WA and the next step in my journey to this place. The party was founded in Calabarin in 1913 by a group of farmer settlers who were tired of city interests taking precedence over their communities and their efforts to carve out a future beyond the Darling Range. The demise of the Nationals has been predicted with regularity for over 100 years, and yet here we are. Perhaps it's time to accept that we're here to stay. Electoral boundary changes, one vote, one value, new compliance regulations, external pressures, you name it, we have weathered it because we know who we are and what we stand for. In Western Australia, the Nationals come together because of our geography, not our ideology. We come together because while many great things have been achieved for regional WA since 1913, the fight continues to make sure we have our fair share of the benefits that come from our successful regional industries like agriculture, mining and resources, and into the future energy production. And it gives me enormous confidence that at the last state election, our friends and supporters in the city, who also see the benefits of thriving regions and the strong track record of the Nationals, have turned out to run for us and vote for us. My hometown of Mullawa has experienced continual decline since our peak in the 1970s. But during that decline, there was one moment which was different, and that was royalties for regions. Mullawa was transformed with long overdue infrastructure upgrades, improvements to our amenity and tourist facilities which are still in use today. Royalties for Regions is the only time I can remember my community feeling genuinely optimistic about the future, and I have voted Nationals ever since. In my first term on the Mullawa Shire Council, we were actively looking for change. Our new CEO, Tom Hartman, thoroughly assessed the assets of Mullawa and then set about planning for what we should have, be and do, even though we had no way of paying for it. Our timing was perfect because the government changed, the Nationals held the balance of power, Royalties for Regions was born, and we were 100% ready to capitalise on the opportunity. We set about refurbishing ageing infrastructure like the swimming pool, which had been built in 1963 and was nearing the end of its life, the caravan park, which overflowed with tourists each year, the tennis courts and other recreation facilities, and the amenity of the main street, making our town a lovely place to be for both visitors and locals. We invested in tourism infrastructure to leverage the wildflower season, building 4 interpreted walk trails and 2 interpreted drive trails to keep the visitors in town longer, boosting the economic potential of the short wildflower season. The list was long, and finally there was a vehicle to start tackling the things that would make our town attractive to move to and to settle in. Royalties for Regions is without doubt one of the best pieces of policy in Western Australia for the last 40 to 50 years. It has been supported by most political parties, although it has been wound back and undermined in its current form. To its critics, I say, come and live in my community or any other community in regional Western Australia, and you will see the investment that happened under R4R was transformational. It was a golden and optimistic time, and the legacy persists today. The Nationals WA are a small party, and we may never have the numbers to govern in our own right, But we have proven without a shadow of doubt the mighty difference we can make across the entirety of this great state. Regional Western Australia already does the heavy lifting for the state. Most of our prosperity comes from mining, agriculture, fishing, forestry, manufacturing and tourism, all industries which happen in the regions. And regional Western Australia will continue to do the heavy lifting as our focus shifts, because this is where mining for critical minerals and the production and transmission of energy will take place, whether that's wind turbines and solar panels, gas or, dare I say it, nuclear energy. The government is not looking to Scarborough or Swan Hills for these installations. They will be out in the regions, impacting productive agricultural land, coastal and rural amenity, remnant native bushland and the already deteriorating road networks. Add to this, any attempts to protect our precious flora and fauna will also have to happen in the regions, because while Perth's urban fringes are allowed to keep sprawling outwards, we will need the workforce out in the regions to pick up the conservation baton to protect, restore and regenerate the remnant bushland that is already under threat from progress. With all of this growth and development, we must be vigilant that our rural and remote communities do not become collateral damage. Industries which spring up around them and drive through them must be held responsible for good corporate citizenship and contribute to these communities. Not just a set of jumpers for the football team or a sponsorship for the agricultural show, but genuine contribution which leaves a legacy of infrastructure or skills which will long outlive the project. All of these experiences, all of these challenges and opportunities is what brought me to this place. I am the real deal when it comes to being a West Australian national. I am half of a successful farming partnership. I am immersed in my rural community and engaged in my region. I live inconveniently far from the airport and spend hours on the road. I aspire for my people, regional Western Australians, to have access to the same level of service and opportunity as I once had as a city girl. I am willing to get in a fight for my party and for my community by standing up for what's fair, because I understand the potential for regional and rural growth, and that stronger regions will lead to a stronger Perth and a stronger state will lead to a stronger nation. I am a true believer when it comes to royalties for regions and fighting for our fair share of this great state's wealth, and I am ready to follow in the footsteps of the Nationals WA politicians who have come before me to build on their legacy. Before I finish, there are some important acknowledgements to make, beginning with Leadership WA. I was blessed to receive a CBH Growing Leaders Scholarship to the 2023 Signature Leadership Program. Over 10 months, I spent time learning about the scope of challenges and opportunities for our great state with 36 incredible Western Australian mid-career leaders. It was an incredible opportunity, and I am pleased that Natalie Sangali and Tom Monks, who joined me on that journey, could be here today. And I also acknowledge Rhys Williams, the member for Mandurah, who was also part of that cohort. I would like to acknowledge my predecessors in this place, the Honourable Colin de Grassa and the Honourable Martin Aldridge. I understand the responsibility that has been passed to me in being the voice of the Nationals WA in this place, and I will use your example of integrity, perseverance and intelligence as my benchmark. I also acknowledge my Nationals colleagues here and in the other place. Leader Shane Love, the member for Mid-West, and Deputy Leader Peter Rundle, the member for Roe, are the experienced hands leading the single largest intake of new Nationals parliamentarians since the party began in 1913. The energy and potential of this generational change is palpable, and I look forward to working with Kirralie Ward, the member for Geraldton, Lachlan Hunter, the member for Central Wheatbelt, Bevan Eates, the member for Warren Blackwood, Scott Leary, the member for Albany, and the Honourable Rob Horseman, MLC, member for Western Australia. The Nationals were very successful at the March election, doubling our numbers in the Legislative Assembly and maintaining our presence here in the Legislative Council. And I would like to take this moment to also acknowledge the candidates who were unsuccessful. I admired your fight and I look forward to seeing you join the team in 2029. There are 3 individuals in the party I would especially like to highlight. The Honourable Mia Davies. What a stellar career in the West Australian Parliament. I am so proud to know you. former minister, leader of the party and leader of the opposition through the aftermath of the COVID pandemic. You have been an inspiration to several generations of women and girls in regional WA, demonstrating that leadership is within their reach. Julie Kirby, we have walked the last part of this journey together as President and State Director. Along with Campaign Director Nathan Quigley, you have been an integral part of a small political party having an outstanding election result. And Shane Love, I have never met anyone with as much grit and determination as you have. You led the opposition through the most unprecedented time in Western Australian politics, and you held the government to account in almost impossible circumstances day after day. I don't think you have ever got the credit for what you achieved in a 53 versus 6 Legislative Assembly. But our election results tell me that the people of Western Australia could see that you stood up for them to protect their property rights and their way of life from government overreach. I am incredibly grateful to the National Party for the opportunities and support that have been given to me. You trusted a complete newcomer with the important role of Policy Director. You then put your faith in me to be your president, and then you gave me the gift of the #1 spot on the Legislative Council ticket. I feel a deep responsibility to repay your confidence in me. I take nothing for granted. This will help to drive me every day. I would like to acknowledge the State Council, the incredible campaign team, the small but super efficient team at State Secretariat, and the members and volunteers who turned up for back-to-back state and federal campaigns. Mostly, I would like to thank the electorate, the West Australians statewide who gave their vote to the Nationals WA and delivered a solid upper house vote in circumstances designed to be the end of us. You saw something in our values and our way of being that resonated with you, and you made a decision to send a message that more than ever before, you want us to stand up for you. I will repay your trust by fighting as hard as I can for what I believe in. And finally, most importantly, thank you to my friends and family. To the community of Mullawa, thank you for welcoming a blow-in and allowing her to become a local. Your support and encouragement brings us here today. A special thank you to my dear friend Leonora Tunbridge. As young graduate school teachers, we were thrown together in a Geeha unit. We instantly became friends, and when we married a pair of cousins, we also became family, our girls growing up together and our lives linked forever. Brain cancer took your life too soon. I miss you every day, but I was so blessed to know you. To my sister Helen Barrett, my first and closest friend, thank you for supporting my journey. Even though our politics are different, we are the product of parents who had opposing political views, which taught the great lesson that love, respect and the things we have in common are so much stronger than the robust debates around the kitchen table. I thank my parents-in-law, Mike and Lynn Freeman, who, like true West Aussie grey nomads, are skipping the winter and watching from Broome. Thank you. I landed on my feet when I married into your family. My beautiful, caring, smart and feisty wee Scottish mum, Helen Robson, your courage to make the decision to make a new life in a new country started a bigger journey which has brought us here. I hope I have made you proud. To Holly and Zoe, who despite all of this always have been and always will be my greatest achievement. I am proud to have raised two fine, intelligent, confident and quite frankly ballsy young women. You are everything I wish I had been at your age, and I love being your mum. And last but definitely not least, thank you to Paul, the farmer who found a wife at the start of a new school year in the Club Hotel in Mullawa. Paul is the man you want around in an emergency, whether it's yet another power outage, a snake in the garden, a collision with a kangaroo on the way home in the middle of the night, an unfolding drought, or living through Cyclone Saroja and the long and complicated aftermath. He faces every problem with calm, logic, practical know-how and an unshakable belief that there's a solution. The pursuit of my dreams has come at a cost for Paul. Unlike metropolitan-based MPs, I will not be coming home most nights, and I will no longer have the time or focus to support him in our family business like I used to. I recognise that this wasn't what you expected, but I know you will tackle this new adventure with your usual practical calm, because I have an unshakable belief in you and I have an unshakable belief in us. People move to the regions for the natural environment, the bush, the beach and the sky, the tree changes and sea changes. And they move to the regions for a good job with career progression, the opportunity seekers and the go-getters. People are ready to move and the regions are ready to accept them. But governments must put in place the things which we know will motivate them to stay. A strong sense of community, a strong sense of safety, reliable healthcare, good education, quality childcare, comfortable and affordable housing, comprehensive telecommunications, and safe and efficient transport networks. It's time to make it easy for our regional movers to put down roots, invest in the future, and find that they belong in a new place. Thank you.
So I reckon I won't, probably close to half an hour, but not much more.
Andy?
Yeah.
Thanks, Jess. Sandra?